So, how do you deal with scrupulosity? How do you overcome it? Well, over the years, I started experiencing scrupulosity about 15 years ago. I've received a lot of suggestions, a lot of advice, most of which I would say really amounts to just different forms of coping mechanisms. Probably the most useful for me were to just distract myself. I had a spiritual director who said, just change the channel, you know. And the other one was to meet with a regular spiritual director and talk things over with them, and then to also just to be obedient to them, whoever they are, to basically conform my will, submit my will to somebody who has authority over me, as a way of kind of transforming my will and directing it and training it. And a lot of that, it helped for a while. It helped to alleviate the symptoms, but I saw that under the surface, even when the scrupulosity was getting better, the root problem was still there, and it was starting to express itself in other ways. What I would say is basically I was kind of covering up, that issue, but the pressure was still there, and it was building up, and it was just bursting out in other areas of my life. So it's then that I found, without even really trying, without trying to find this as a cure for scrupulosity, I began to see God differently, have a different perspective on who he is, on his nature, and on my relationship with him. I began to see God as a loving father, and that just really transformed my whole life. And without even trying to do anything about scrupulosity, I began to see the scruples starting to get better and better and better. It's because ultimately I began to see that God is greater than my limited mind. I wanted perfect understanding. I wanted certainty, and I couldn't get it. My mind could not provide me the certainty about my eternal destination that I wanted, but I realized that God is greater than my certainty. God is greater than anything I could do to prove or to earn any assurance or certainty about my salvation. He's greater than my sin. So even if I have any sin, he is greater. He's willing to forgive me, and I just need to turn to him and trust in him. And so I think getting this different perspective on God helped, because then when scruples would turn up, when I would get bouts of scrupulosity, I could see it from a different perspective. I wasn't seeing that God was trying to trip me up, or that he was keeping tabs on every little thing I did and with exacting rigorous justice. But instead, I could see that God was a loving father, and that even in this, he cared about me, and he was concerned about me, and he loved me. And so, when it came time to did I commit a mortal sin or not? And maybe I'm not sure, and maybe I should just play it safe and just go and confess it anyway. In the back of my mind, I could look at it differently and say, okay, I'm not dealing with this rigorous, exacting taskmaster judge figure, okay, that's keeping tabs on everything, and I have to make an accounting of every single thing. I'm dealing with a father. And I think with my children, if one of my children does something wrong, I'm not there with a list of everything they did and checking off everything they've done or haven't done, and making sure that they apologize for every little thing, and they make perfect reparation for everything. In an ideal world, oh yeah, that'd be great if we could get perfect justice. But more importantly than that, is my relationship with them. And I'm seeing that they do something wrong. I want to welcome them back. I want to love them back into a relationship with me, if God forbid they ever were to break that. So that's how God is. I'm convinced. And sometimes I think, well, am I wrong about this? Is he really a taskmaster judge? And I think, well, if he is, at least I'm kind of flattering him, because I am seeing him as better than he really is. So even at the judgment at the end of my life, I can say to him, hey God, he says, oh, you didn't do this, and you didn't do that, and you didn't repent of this, and you didn't repent of that. And I can say, but God, it's because I trusted that you were really loving, and you would take care of me, that you were a good, holy, all-loving Father. And he might say, well, but that's not me. And I could say, yeah, but isn't that a flattery? Isn't that a great compliment that I see you that way, even though it turned out you weren't like that? But I don't believe that. I believe that God really is a loving Father. And because of that, I don't have to have those doubts anymore, because I'm putting my faith and my trust in him, not in my own mind, not in my own penance even, not in what I do or what I know. And so for me, that has been the most transformative thing in my life, is just changing my whole perspective on God, my relationship with him, seeing him as a loving Father who is constantly loving me, and even in the scruples is just loving the problems right out of me and loving me back into deeper intimacy and communion with him.